It's the final week of Sonic September, and for this last segment, I'm checking out two games that were playable on the Genesis's hardware expansions, the Sega CD and the 32X. As such, I'm checking out Sonic CD and Knuckles Chaotix. We'll start with Sonic the Hedgehog CD. It's the same style as the original trilogy for Sonic, in which it's a side-scrolling platforming game. There's enough new things to keep the game fresh, and with the CD's additional capabilities, there's a lot of stuff that was enhanced that couldn't be done on the regular Genesis's hardware. In any case, just like many other Sega CD games, you get an opening video when the game begins. It's in an anime style, and it, like many other early CD-based games with video, is incredibly choppy. You also get to listen to a pop song as it plays. Not my style, but it's there if you're into that kind of thing. But let's get on to the actual game. The story goes as such. Sonic goes to visit some planet that only appears once a year or something like that. It's usually floating in the air, but this time it's chained down with robots on it. Guess who's behind it? Yep, Robotnik again. Robotnik wants this planet because it has the power to manipulate time. This happens to be the main selling point of Sonic CD, and I'll get to that shortly. At its core, Sonic CD is compared to best to Sonic 2. You get the spin dash, although it doesn't seem to work as well as it did in Sonic 2. It's also much more fast-paced, as speed is a huge factor in the game. However, special stages are still accessed at the end of the level if you have 50 rings, just like the original Sonic game. So if you've played any of the original 3 Sonic games, you'll know the basics. Then we come to the time travel part. As you run around, you'll see posts that say past or future. Running by one will start the activation of this post. In order to fully complete the time change, you need to run at full speed for a few seconds without stopping. If you can manage to do that, you're shown a small scene of Sonic changing time periods, and then he'll re-enter the stage where you changed. The level has gone through various changes, including background, rings, and even the layout of the level. If the time runs out while your post is activated, nothing will happen. These time changes aren't required in any way, so if you're like me and struggle to switch between time periods, don't feel so bad. Let me move on to the special stages. It's vastly different than any of the other special stages I've ever seen in a Sonic game. It's a 3D game not unlike Mario Kart. More accurately, I could compare it to the bonus stages in Jackrabbit. Now there's a game I need to review sometime. Anyway, your goal is to destroy the UFOs that are floating around. Get them all, and get a Chaos Emerald. It's not so easy though. There are plenty of obstacles floating around. There's hazardous areas on the floor, and water that's surrounding the map is damaging. When Sonic touches water, the timer will start to decrease at a much faster rate. When the time is up, the minigame is over. Normally, I wouldn't complain about this. However, the most damning thing about the minigame is the control scheme. It's nearly impossible to control Sonic properly. The controls are hard to explain. I can't even say if they're too loose or too tight because honestly, it feels like a combination of each. Turning is too tight and jumping is too loose. Only thing I can say is you'll need to play it to understand what I mean. Anyway, these controls make it nearly impossible to accurately jump towards UFOs and land where you want to. Most of the times, you'll be landing in water and ruining any chances of you completing the special stage. I don't think I was able to get a single emerald, no matter how many times I attempted it. I failed. Of course, this meant that I couldn't get the best ending. At the end of the game, when you're fighting Robotnik, you defeat his first form, and then the game ends unless you've gotten all the emeralds. In fact, the game taunts you by saying try again. Oh, screw you too, Sonic. At first, I thought the game had taken a small downgrade in regards to power-ups. I mean, Sonic 3 had 3 separate shields, where Sonic CD only has 1. Also, Sonic looks at the same sprite that was used in the first game, which confused me because Sonic 3 and 2's Sonic looked a little bit better. However, after a bit of research, I found out why. Sonic CD was actually released a year prior to Sonic 3. That explained a lot. Also, unlike almost every other Sonic game, there are no flickies present when destroying robots. Instead, they drop seeds that sprout sunflowers. What the fuck? Why sunflowers? Why not have flickies like every other Sonic game? I don't get it. Also, to me, the music isn't as catchy as the other games. It's CD based, so it does sound better, although it pauses after each song ends so it can reload, but that's just a limitation to the hardware. The music isn't really bad, it's just not as good. Plus, the Collision Chaos Future theme sounds like something they may have borrowed from Streets of Rage. Or maybe it's just me and I want to play Streets of Rage. In any case, Sonic CD isn't terribly difficult. Other than the infuriating special stages, Sonic CD can be considered a moderately challenging game, but not something that will frustrate you to quit playing it. So should you play Sonic CD? Absolutely. I know a lot of Sonic fans consider it to be the best 2D Sonic platforming game, but I'd argue that honor still goes to Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It's still a good game, and it's fun to play when the time travel aspects. My Sonic CD score? 8 out of 10. Now, time to finish off the month with Knuckles Chaotix, a game that was featured on the Genesis' 32X. I'm not going to explain all the hardware upgrades because there's plenty of videos for that. I'd recommend watching the AVGN's 32X video if you want to learn more about it. Instead, I'm focusing strictly on the game. Knuckles Chaotix shifts gears from a standard Sonic game to a more of a puzzler. In fact, Sonic doesn't appear at all, at least not anywhere I've ever seen. Instead, the primary protagonist is Knuckles. He goes to visit some sort of extreme amusement park to find Robotnik has taken over. For some reason, Knuckles needs to use the power of the Chaos Emeralds to link up with a friend and clear each of the park rides. Each zone is essentially a ride and has 5 different stages. You'll fight Robotnik on the 5th stage of every zone. Unlike the other Sonic games, the game's zones aren't exactly linear. There's an odd stage select that you're forced to use. The final zone is only available after the previous 4 have been cleared. Now, this isn't your normal stage select. Instead, it's selected at random. When you activate this device, the stages will cycle. Slapping the button will cause the selection to stop and you'll enter whatever stage you had highlighted. It's a very strange system, but it's not the worst thing in the world, and it is usable. The only real odd thing about it is that when you only have Zone 5 left, you're still forced to use the stage select. What's the point of this? Just throw me into the stage and be done with it. Before you get onto that though, there is a small tutorial stage. It'll teach you everything you need to know about the mechanics of the game. As I said, you're forced to link up with one of Knuckles' pals. As such, both characters need to remain on the screen at all times. Part of the fun is to make sure that both characters remain with a constant momentum. If you're playing with a friend, this isn't so hard. Or, it's not if both players have a good chemistry. But, even that's better than the AI. They often aren't on the same page as you, and as such, any momentum you may be able to get is ruined quickly. Because of this, it's not often that you'll be able to go full speed and maintain that. Because of this momentum issue, the spin dash is nearly useless. Instead, you can decide to have your partner hold their ring. By doing so, you can run forwards, and the springiness of the ring's link can be used to propel you and your partner forward. You can also use the ring to put your partner in place in areas where you are on a lower platform and can't jump to where they are. You can have them hold the ring and you can attempt to swing around to their location. But let's just say that they're somewhere inaccessible and you can't get them loose. Well, you can press A to call them to you. This tactic costs 10 rings, but it can be useful, and rings are typically in abundance. There's also not a lot of enemies to endanger you, and you can even have your pal take care of anything you find. If they get hit, you only lose a portion of their rings. However, unlike every other Sonic game out there, using this callback tactic can drop you to below 0 rings. That's right, you can actually go negative. It doesn't happen often, but it is possible. I think the only way to die using this method is to go below a negative 100 rings. Naturally, if you get damaged with anything less than 1 ring, you'll have to start the level over. This brings me to the next thing about Knuckles Chaotix. There's infinite lives. That's right, no limit. If you fail a stage, you just get sent back to the hub of the game to choose another stage and your partner if you need to. Which brings me to your partners. I'm not going to run through them all, although each has a slightly different pro and con. Instead, I'm just going to discuss the way that you choose your partner. If you're playing with a friend, each chooses what character they play as. In fact, even in the single player game, you're not forced to control Knuckles, but he's definitely one of the best all-around players. But back to the point. Before the stage select, you get to choose your pal in the form of a crane game. You have 10 seconds to forcefully choose someone, or the crane will pick up whoever is at their appropriate spot. Because of this system, it's way too easy to grab one of the generic 2 robot pals which aren't as useful as the other Chaotix. Oh, that's one thing I did forget to mention. The Chaotix are the group of main characters you can play as, almost like Knuckles' crew. Now, you might think that the awkward momentum shifts might make the game harder, and that is true, but even so, the game is ridiculously easy. Most of the time, you can run through the stage and hit the end without even engaging an enemy. In fact, the biggest challenge is the layout of the stages. They're possibly the most confusing layouts possible, and there are times where you'll be running around just trying to figure out which is the right way. Because of this, the game gets sort of boring quickly. It's fun for the first few stages as you check out the gameplay, but after that, the novelty starts to get old. There are 2 different minigames you can access. One is a free-falling stage where you pilot Knuckles or whatever character you're playing as down a square hole. You can get rings, power-ups that slow down or speed up a friend's selection screens, because both of those are incredibly useful, and other various things. The catch is that rings are drained from you as you are falling. Also, bonus rings are kind of sporadic, and as such, this bonus game just isn't worth it. But at the end of each stage, there's also a chance to play another special stage. where you can get not Chaos Emeralds, but Chaos Rings. Same difference, really. This special stage is kind of a combination of Sonic 2 and Sonic 3's special stages. You'll be able to freely navigate on any of the 4 walls, as the room will shift as you run around. Your simple goal is to obtain the required amount of blue orbs. Fail by the time you get to the checkpoint, and you'll just have to loop the segment. Oh, and just like the other minigame, your ring count doubles as a timer. This special stage can be equally as frustrating as the Sonic CD one, but not quite as much. I was at least able to get some of the Chaos Rings, but later on, I gave up just because I wasn't able to get enough orbs. So I'd hit the end of the stage and just say, screw it, I'm not playing the bonus round. So again, I wasn't able to see the good ending, which is really depressing in Knuckles Chaotix, since after fighting the last boss, if you don't have all the Chaos Emeralds, rings, you get treated to this scene during the credits. Speaking of bosses, they're challenging, but I can't consider them difficult. Before each boss, you're treated to a small scene where Robotnik approaches you. It's pretty cool to watch, but then you just fight the boss as normal. Let's move on to the boss fight I do want to discuss though. The one against Metal Sonic. This one takes place after you cleared all the 5 zones. Metal Sonic basically takes over the stage select screen. What you need to do is activate the machine to select the square with the X on it. Do so and the space is damaged and a new square gets selected as an X. Choose something other than the X and a hazard appears. You get no rings in this battle, so if you get hit once you lose your PAL for a few seconds. Get hit again before they reappear and you're starting this battle over. This fight could take a few seconds or a few hours, depending on how good you are at selecting the X. In my opinion, although different, it's one of the stupidest boss fights I've seen. It's essentially relying on chance you get to win it. At least the boss battle afterwards is a traditional one. Oh, and one last warning. Die in the final Robotnik battle and you have to fight Metal Sonic again. What crap. So the game might be boring, but at least it has good music and graphics. The music is your standard Sonic tunes, which isn't a bad thing. If anything, they are probably the most upbeat songs in the Sonic series. The graphics on the other hand are extremely bright and eye-catching. The detail to the world should be noted. It seems like there's not a single empty pixel. There's also seems to be a few glitches with the game. I found 2 that I was able to write down. One, in the Marina Zone Act 5, I had to press a button to make a ship move. I had to power up that made Knuckles extremely large. He shrunk as the ship was moving, and therefore got pushed into being hung up on the environment. Well, I was then stuck in an early area, since I couldn't get the ship to reappear. Another glitch was at the end of the game during the Robotnik battle. I was fighting him, and he got me with the laser. The game started its death sequence, but then seemed to lock up. Strange. Knuckles Chaotix is a strange game from the Sonic franchise. Part of me likes it, but part of me thinks it's a huge boring waste. I guess if you're into exploration games like this where you just want to get from point A to point B with little in the way, it's worth a playthrough. I just hope you're ready to fight the inconsistent momentum. My score for Knuckles Chaotix is a 6 out of 10. I know there's a ton of other Sonic games out there, but maybe next year I'll do a part 2. But as always, that's more games for another time. This is Reaper. Just like always, check me out on Facebook, facebook.com/ReapersReviews. Happy fragging.